Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. 14 years ago, Al Gore won the Nobel Prize and told the committee that the world was spinning out of kilter.
Another new study to be presented by U.S. Navy researchers later this week warns it could happen in as little as 7 years. 7 years from now. In the last few months, it has been harder and harder to misinterpret the signs that our world is spinning out of kilter.
Nobel laureate Al Gore was predicting that the Arctic would be ice-free by the year 2014. And 14 years later, there's more ice in the Arctic now than there was when he made that prediction. Reality is that despite all the predictions of doom, there's been no trend in Arctic sea ice over the past 15 years. And a new report from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration says that the world's climate is spinning out of kilter. 2020 saw the highest concentration of greenhouse gases in Earth's atmosphere on record, along with unprecedented global sea levels, fires in the Arctic. The article included a picture of the sun, but the authors didn't seem to recognize that the sun might have some influence on Earth's weather. Let's look first at this claim. 2020 saw the highest concentration of greenhouse gases in Earth's atmosphere on record. This is a graph of atmospheric CO2 levels and Earth's temperature over the last 600 million years. Atmospheric CO2 peaked 540 million years ago at about 7,000 parts per million, but we're currently down here at about 400 parts per million, which is close to the lowest on record. The government report said that CO2 was close to the highest on record when it was actually close to the lowest. So we might wonder, what was life like when CO2 levels were 15 times higher than now? 540 million years ago was when the greatest expansion of life on Earth occurred. That was when corals and shellfish appeared in the ocean. Apparently they like very high levels of CO2 and temperatures much higher than we have at present. Now, let's look at their claim of record sea levels. Over the past 20,000 years, sea level has risen about 120 meters or 400 feet. Almost all of that rise occurred before 8,000 years ago, and over the past 8,000 years, sea level rise has been much slower. We're apparently supposed to believe that this 400 feet was all natural, but the last few inches were man-made. The tide gauge at Lower Manhattan shows that sea level is rising at about the same rate now as it was when Abraham Lincoln was president. And the rise in sea level which has occurred has been below even the most conservative prediction of climate scientists, who predicted that sea level should be rising very quickly by now. The reality is that sea level has been rising since the end of the last ice age, and it's going to continue to rise until we start heading into a new ice age. And when that starts happening, we're going to be in real trouble. The human race doesn't fare very well when Earth gets cold. This is a giant coral reef in West Texas, which is thousands of feet above the current sea level. At one time, this reef was just below the surface of the sea. The land moves up and down, and the sea moves up and down, but I'm having a very difficult time believing the claim that Earth's sea level is the highest ever. The other piece of evidence which was presented to show that the Earth is spinning out of kilter was fires in the Arctic. Climate propagandists want people to believe that hot weather in the Arctic is unusual. This is a very old superstition. 100 years ago, Arctic explorer Stephenson went around the country and around the world explaining to people that this belief is not true. He pointed out that summer temperatures in the Arctic Circle could actually be very hot. In fact, Alaska's record temperature of 100 degrees Fahrenheit was recorded north of the Arctic Circle. In 1927, an expedition of motorists tried to drive to the Arctic Ocean. To their continued astonishment, the temperature was never less than 90 degrees in the shade, and they had an actual race with death among the forest fires in Sweden over terrible roads. They never actually made it to the Arctic Ocean because the permafrost was melting and there was too much mud. Hot weather and forest fires are not unusual in the Arctic. In 1937, another Arctic expedition had to be halted due to forest fires. This shouldn't surprise anyone because during the summer the Arctic receives more solar radiation than any place else on Earth. Nothing in this article had anything to do with reality other than the picture of the sun showing that it's extremely hot. It's almost like the giant thermonuclear reactor in the sky controls the climate rather than the 1 part per 10,000 increase in atmospheric CO2 over the past century. Toto has been pulling back the curtain on this climate clown show for the past 13 years. You can visit him, Curie, and Caesar on the web at realclimatescience.com.